PK52, the Saturday morning meeting. I had a phenomenal week this week. So I worked the entire week in the greater Milwaukee area, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and met some legacies. Interesting. Some very young, under 25-year-old people. Dads worked in the industry, retired from the industry. One guy, grandmother worked in the industry, was 30 cars a month. I'm sure you didn't call her granny. I'm sure you called her top of the board. And so met a bunch of people and got a great amount of questions. I love a week where at the end of the session really begins. You know, how do I do this? How do I do that? There's some people in there that are paying attention. In our business, things are slowing down. Why do they slow down? When the interest rate spikes and then there's a threat of higher interest rates going out there, then buying for transportation, toys like wave runners, boats, RVs, jet skis, those things start to slow down. Less time, less trips to the nail salon. Sometimes we go, somebody goes an extra week without a haircut. Now that's not me, but some people do that. So that expendable income, that limited income that you use on personal entertainment actually starts to go away. And so people start to keep their cars a little longer. So I had some phenomenal questions. I've had some people hit me up on social media and ask me some very lengthy questions. And the big question is, how do you go to that next step? Listen, if you walk into a very good sales organization with a good structure and a good management staff, then you can make a living. There's no doubt about it. If you follow the rules, come in with a good attitude, work your hours, then you can make a living and you can pay your bills. However, in the sales industry, a lot of people have never really been in the sales industry. In the sales industry, it requires a lot more than working 40 hours a week, really 30, and wasting 10 hours somewhere around the day and then having every weekend off. That's not the way it is in the sales industry. You lose your weekends. Everybody else has a weekend. Your children's sports are on the weekends. Things are going on the weekends. And even if you get off early enough on a Saturday and don't have to work a Sunday, the week's taking its toll on you. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. So there has to be a reward at the end of this. I've talked to salespeople all over the nation and I ask them how many hours they work. And they start with, Casey, I work, 40 to 45, 50 hours a week. And that's not true. Because at the end of a bad day, you go home and you're still discussing what happened in the day. You talk to your family about it. They don't really want to hear it, but you still talk about it. You wake up the next morning planning your day. If you have some time away from the dealership, maybe a week's vacation, you think about the sales organization, the store, the dealership, or wherever you work multiple times. And so really, in a sales industry where you have to work for every single dollar, you don't get paid for showing up. You don't get paid for showing up. You have to work for every single dollar and work for every single customer. Then it's a 24-hour-a-day job. And there's so many people in this country that can't do that and won't do that. But the select few that do it deserve to have a bigger reward. If you're at every person's beck and call, if you're there when they ask, if you come in on your day off, if you stay late, if you miss some things that are going on in your family because you're trying to do the best for your client, then you deserve to have more than an average income. And so the questions I had asked this week were really good. Casey, how do I go to that next level? Well, if you walk out there and there's 30 people and you're doing the exact same thing the 30 people are doing, then you can expect average money. You can expect an average result because you're not breaking out. I was very fortunate to work with a guy. He owned multiple dealerships. In fact, we had 2 used car standalones. We had Pontiac, Cadillac, Honda, and then across town we had a standalone Toyota where I worked. So he had a bunch of dealerships and a bunch of salespeople. His rule was you couldn't sell cars or write service for him unless you were a part of a civic organization in town. Lions Club, Optimist, Toastmasters, whatever. But he wanted somebody in every organization that ran the city to be a part of that organization to create a bigger footprint for the dealership. Now, if you don't think that's brilliant, then this is probably not the PK52 you want to be listening to, but it was brilliant. And I had so many contacts and so many sales outside the 4 walls of the dealership because my dealer forced me to join a place that actually enriched me. I went to Toastmasters, and Toastmasters is an international speaking organization. What it does is it teaches you how to be able to get up in front of a group of people and to be able to speak and not have any reservations. Well, the only people that would join that would be doctors and lawyers and people that had to stand up and do speeches, professors, and these were all white-collar people. And I got to be honest, I was the only salesperson that sold cars that was a part of that organization, and it was very beneficial to me. Civically, I was a youth pastor at a church, and my Wednesday nights had over 100 kids from around town coming in. It was very rewarding for me. But I knew when all those kids were going to turn 16, and they're not going to buy a car from anybody else but me. And so the reason I was a youth pastor wasn't to sell cars, but I got to tell you, by working outside the four walls of the dealership, you create a whole different dynamic for yourself. I'm still going to work the hours of the store. We know when people come in. There's not a whole lot of people that are walking around the dealership trying to buy a car at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Now, it happens. I get it. But usually the days are after we close at night. If your dealership closes at 7, they show up at 6:55. That happens all the time. On a Saturday, they shop every place in town. And when you're trying to actually go enjoy your family, that's when they show up. I ran a store in Atlanta. We were open 7 days a week until midnight, so our posted hours were midnight. Do you think people came in before midnight? No, they showed up at 11:55 p.m. And so we'd stay till 2 or 3 in the morning. So those things are really required to be outside of average, but you're still working in the same pond. You're fishing in the same pond that the other 10, 15, 20, 40 salespeople at that store are fishing. There's only one fish in that pond at a time. So over the next year, and think about it, what do you enjoy doing? Are you civically involved in your community? Because I promise you, people have never, ever, ever voted in an election are the biggest noisemakers when it comes to a politician doing something they don't like. But if you're not willing to go to the poll and cast your vote or do your due diligence and figure out who's going to be the best for your family and your community, then I don't think you have anything to gripe about. It's just amazing that since griping doesn't cost anything, people will do it all the time. Hey, it's free, let's just gripe. And so what I'm saying is plug in. There are so many unique people. Men and women in this car business, it's funny because it's still a male-dominated business. But the funny thing about it is that women that get in this business that really dig in and realize relationships go a long way are the ones that really start to go to the top of this business. And I find that to be very, very interesting. While another group of people will stand outside and complain about what's not available and what's not happening, then there's another group of people that are making things happen and they're changing what goes on. Now, I've watched some salespeople in the automotive space go from not having any idea about a product or how to sell that product to running some of the biggest stores in the United States. Because what they did was they got outside the fray and they worked within themselves. They educated themselves and they found out which way was going. I mean, the thing about it is, and I'll close with this, and I've said it multiple times, how is it possible on any given day in any sales organization where somebody has bought that product before, whether it was furniture or a car or a boat, that you would get them as a fresh opportunity? What that meant was their salesperson was so bad at following up and explaining that they expected to do business with them forever that customer went directly to a total stranger. So every time you get a customer and you don't know who they are, the last salesperson really failed to be able to tell that person why it was beneficial for them to have a long-term business relationship with them. PK52, the Saturday Morning Meeting.